All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into a world of surveillance and thought control.
Hmm. Sounds a bit ominous.
It is, we're going deep into George Orwell's 1984.
A classic.
It is, and we're working with some pretty intense excerpts from the novel.
Oh, wow. So right into the thick of it then.
Yeah, no time wasted, and let me tell you, these excerpts are chillin'.
I can imagine.
Yeah, well, one thing that always gets me about 1984 is just how quickly
Yeah.
Orwell throws us into this oppressive reality.
It's immediate. You're right there from the first sentence.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can practically smell the boiled cabbage,
Oh.
feel that kind of worn out carpet under Winston's shoes in
Yeah.
that dreary hallway.
Sets the scene perfectly.
It does. And then, there's that looming poster of Big Brother.
Oh, yeah, that poster. It's so brilliantly creepy.
Isn't it?
Those eyes that seem to follow you everywhere,
Yeah.
even in just a static image.
It's like he really nailed the whole idea of constant surveillance.
He did.
Just that one detail.
Uh-huh. Makes you think about how effective even really subtle forms of surveillance
Right.
can be in just shaping how people behave.
Totally. But it's not just Big Brother watching, is it?
No, not at all.
The whole atmosphere of Oceania, it's like it's designed to be oppressive.
Exactly. Orwell was so meticulous in how he created that setting.
Yeah.
Winston's rundown apartment, the broken down lift, even like the shoddy razors,
Yeah.
and that rationed gin, they all create this picture of scarcity and decay.
Oh, it's so cleverly done because it immediately creates this contrast
Yeah.
between what the party's saying, like all this propaganda
Right.
about how amazing and thriving society is,
Uh-huh.
and then the grim reality that Winston's actually experiencing.
You can feel his frustration just simmering
Yeah.
under the surface.
Oh, totally. And then on top of that,
Yeah.
the party's just constantly bombarding everyone with these contradictory slogans.
Yeah. War is peace, freedom is slavery.
Ignorance is strength.
It's completely mind-bending.
You know what's funny? I always kind of felt like those slogans, they were a bit over the top, almost comical, you know? But then when you start to think about it, like how often do we encounter that kind of twisted logic
Exactly.
and doublespeak in like our own world today?
Yeah.
It's suddenly a lot less funny.
That's exactly the point Orwell was making.
Yeah.
He wasn't just trying to predict the future.
Right.
He was holding up a mirror to these totalitarian tendencies
Yeah.
that he saw emerging in his own time.
Uh-huh. And that's where the whole idea of these ministries comes in?
The Ministry of Truth, pumping out all this propaganda.
Right.
The Ministry of Peace, actually waging war.
The Ministry of Love.
Practicing torture.
And it's just like he
Yeah.
took the worst parts of like bureaucracy
Yeah,
and cranked them up to 11.
totally.
And it's so effective at maintaining the party's control.
It is.
Like, take the 2 Minutes Hate, for example.
Yeah,
This orchestrated frenzy where they're all targeting Emmanuel Goldstein.
right. This almost mythical enemy of the state.
Yeah, and Orwell describes it, like people being completely swept up in it.
Oh, yeah.
Screaming, throwing things.
Mm-hmm.
Even Winston gets caught up in that whole mob mentality.
It's disturbing because it's not even really about Goldstein.
Right,
It's about this releasing of all this pent-up emotion
right.
in this totally controlled environment. It's
Yeah.
like all that anger and frustration is being directed at this convenient scapegoat.
Yeah.
But then it creates this sense of unity,
Uh-huh.
even if it's based on fear and hatred.
It's chilling
Yeah,
because it reminds me of how easily people can just get manipulated
That's
by these
right.
powerful figures who are exploiting those primal emotions.
we see it all the time, don't we?
We do in media and politics.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
That's exactly why 1984, I think, is still so relevant.
Yeah.
It's this cautionary tale about the dangers of not thinking critically,
Right.
of blindly accepting what people in power tell us.
Yeah. But even in this totally oppressive world,
Right.
there are these glimmers of resistance.
Yes, there are.
Which brings us to Winston and what seems like this tiny, insignificant act of rebellion,
Oh, yeah.
writing in a diary.
Seems so simple.
It does, right?
Almost quaint in our digital age.
It does, but in Oceania,
Yeah.
where they're literally policing your thoughts,
Uh-huh.
it's incredibly
It's
dangerous.
only dangerous.
And Orwell really drives that point home.
He does.
With that powerful line he wrote, he had committed, would still have committed, even if he had never set pen to paper, the essential crime that contained all others in itself.
Thought crime, they called it.
Just the act of thinking independently is a crime.
It makes you wonder, like, what would happen if we could actually monitor people's thoughts?
Right.
Would we end up in a world where any little disagreement, any dissent
Yeah.
is instantly squashed?
It's a scary thought.
It is really scary, and the party takes that fear to the extreme
They do.
with this constant threat of the thought police,
They are literally the embodiment of the state.
intruding into the private realm of your mind.
Yeah, and even within families, there's no guarantee of safety. Orwell shows us
Yeah.
this in a really chilling way with the Parsons family.
Oh, it's Parsons' kids.
Oh my God.
Brainwashed little spies for the party.
Reporting on their own parents.
It's like Orwell took this idea of helicopter parenting
Yeah.
and turned it into like a nightmare.
It's like he's showing how totalitarianism wants to control every single aspect of life.
It does.
Even the most intimate family bonds.
Trust becomes impossible. Suspicion
Yeah.
reigns supreme.
But even in this atmosphere, this stifling atmosphere of fear and paranoia,
Yeah.
there's this spark of defiance
Mm.
that emerges with the arrival of Julia,
Julia.
the seemingly orthodox party member
Right.
who surprises everyone.
Everyone, especially Winston.
Especially
She's like this breath of fresh air.
She is.
But is her rebellion more about just personal freedom?
Right.
Or is it something deeper?
Yeah, we'll explore that
That's a good question.
in the next part of our deep dive.
I'm intrigued.
Into 1984.
I can't wait. Julie, she's a fascinating character.
She is.
Because, like, on the surface, she seems like such a dedicated party member.
Uh-huh.
But underneath all that, that facade, there's this whole spirit of rebellion.
It's like she's playing this really dangerous game,
Yeah.
putting on that mask of conformity,
Right?
but then secretly indulging in all these forbidden pleasures.
Makes you wonder how many others are doing the same thing.
Right.
Just hiding their true selves out of fear.
Yeah, it's one of those things that makes 1984 so unsettling.
Absolutely.
You just never know who to trust. Even
Right.
someone like Julia,
Right.
who seems so carefree, so rebellious,
Yeah.
could still be, harboring secrets.
Oh, totally.
And then their relationship so clandestine, hidden away above Mr. Charrington's shop.
Yeah.
It becomes this little oasis of freedom in
Yeah.
this world that's so oppressive.
They can finally just be themselves.
Right. Even if it's just for a stolen moment.
Exactly. And their whole affair is a direct challenge to the party.
It is.
And their control over sexuality and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
The party wants to eliminate passion,
Yeah.
wants to reduce all human interaction to just this purely functional level.
Right.
So Julia and Winston's love affair, it's like this dangerous deviation from that norm.
It's like they're reclaiming something deeply human
Gar.
in the face of these dehumanizing forces.
Exactly.
But their rebellion, it is driven by different desires,
Yeah.
isn't it? Like Winston's searching for truth.
Right. He wants understanding,
Uh-huh.
while Julia is more focused on just living in the moment.
Yeah, carving out her own little space of freedom.
Exactly. And maybe that difference in motivation
Uh-huh.
explains why Julia is so much better
Yeah.
at navigating all the party's rules.
She's pragmatic. She knows which lines not to cross.
Right, whereas Winston,
Yeah.
he's driven by this deeper intellectual curiosity.
Yeah. That ultimately leads to his downfall.
It's almost like his pursuit of truth makes him more vulnerable in a way.
Yeah, he can't just accept the party's lies. He needs to understand why,
Uh-huh.
how.
Right, and that desire for knowledge is what leads him to
Yeah.
O'Brien,
Yeah.
this enigmatic inner party member.
Who seems to have all the answers.
Right, like he holds the key to unlocking all the secrets of Ingsoc.
O'Brien is such a masterfully crafted character.
Oh, he is.
He just has this air of internet and authority.
Yes.
Like he's operating on a completely different level than the average party member.
Makes sense that Winston's drawn to him.
Totally.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, that scene in O'Brien's apartment.
Yes.
Luxurious apartment, real wine.
Uh-huh.
That whispered from.
Branches and lemons.
Say the bells of St. Clements.
It gives me chills every time I read it.
It's like they're sharing a secret.
Yeah.
This connection to a past
I bet-
that the parties tried to erase.
Exactly.
And that's what makes O'Brien's betrayal so devastating.
It's
He
crushing.
represents hope.
Right.
The possibility of resistance.
Yeah, like maybe there's hope from within the party itself.
And when that hope is shattered,
Yeah.
it's like Winston's whole world just collapses.
It's such a gut punch moment.
It is.
And it's a reminder of how easily we could be deceived by these powerful figures.
Oh, yeah.
O'Brien's charisma, his intellect,
Right.
it all masks his true intentions.
Yeah, he's lulling Winston into this false sense of security.
Classic example of how totalitarian regimes
Yeah.
use manipulation and deception to maintain control.
And for Winston, that betrayal, it marks the beginning of his descent
Oh, yeah.
into the darkest depths of the party's power.
Room 101.
Room 101.
Just the name evokes such a sense of dread.
It does, but it's not just the physical torture that makes it so terrifying, is it?
No, it's not. It's the psychological power.
Yeah.
It's the party's ultimate weapon,
Uh-huh.
designed to break you, to force you to betray your core beliefs.
Right.
And to embrace their warped reality.
And it's not just Winston who faces this.
Yeah.
Orwell gives us these glimpses of other victims.
Yeah.
Ampleforth.
The poet,
Yeah, clinging to his rhyme and meter.
even Parsons,
Parse.
seemingly loyal party member,
Right.
both just broken by this serum.
It really highlights just how arbitrary and unforgiving the
Yeah.
party's justice system is.
Anyone can become a target.
Right. Yeah.
No matter how loyal you think you are.
Yeah.
Or how innocent.
Room 101 just becomes this symbol of the party's absolute power
It does.
over the individual.
Uh-huh.
And then there's the mystery surrounding Room 101.
Yeah, we never actually know what's in there.
We don't, just that it contains your deepest fear.
Your worst nightmare.
This is where Orwell's genius really shines.
It does.
He leaves those specific details to our imagination.
Right.
Forces us to confront our own deepest fears.
What would break us?
Yeah, what would make us betray everything?
Makes you think.
It does. And for Winston...
Rats,
those tiny little creatures.
Primal fear.
They represent his absolute primal fear.
Yeah.
And the party knows it.
They exploit it perfectly.
They do, to just completely shatter his last vestige of resistance.
That scene where he begs O'Brien
Oh my God.
to torture Julia instead of him.
It's heartbreaking.
It is. It shows just how far they've pushed him.
Yeah.
How they've eroded his compassion and love.
Right.
Just to achieve total control.
And what's so disturbing is they don't just want obedience.
No, they want him to believe.
They want him to genuinely believe in their warped reality.
That's the essence of doublethink.
Right.
Holding two completely contradictory beliefs.
Yeah.
And accepting them both as true.
The ultimate form of mind control.
It is, and O'Brien says it so clearly.
Yeah.
The party seeks power entirely for its own sake. The object of power is power.
Chills every time.
Doesn't it?
It reveals the true nature of Ingsoc.
Yeah, it's not about utopia. It's not about serving the people.
Right.
It's about dominance and control just for the sake of it.
It's like that scene where O'Brien's trying to convince Winston that 2 + 2 = 5.
Oh, yeah.
It's not about math.
Right.
It's about power, the power to define reality.
Exactly.
And in the end, Winston is forced to embrace that warped reality.
He betrays Julia, accepts doublethink,
Uh-huh.
and even comes to love Big Brother.
It's a hollow victory for the party.
It is.
But a devastating defeat for the human spirit.
Absolutely.
But does Winston truly believe?
Mm.
Or is he just playing the part to survive?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is. We'll delve into that in the final part of our deep dive into 1984.
Sounds good. Yeah, it really is a tough question.
Right. Does Winston actually buy into the party's whole twisted reality?
Or is he just putting on an act?
To survive.
Exactly. It's a question that haunts me every time I finish
Yes.
1984.
On the one hand, we see him seemingly embracing the party's ideology.
Even expressing love for Big Brother.
It's just chillin'.
Isn't it?
Winston sitting there in the Chestnut Tree Cafe, sipping gin.
Uh-huh. Totally absorbed in the propaganda.
It's a shell of his former self.
It's like this hollow victory
Yeah.
for the party's mind control.
But there are these little hints.
Oh, yeah, there are.
That maybe his transformation isn't as complete.
Right.
Like, remember that moment?
Yeah.
When he thinks of Julia?
Mm-hmm.
But it's with a sense of detachment.
Almost indifference?
Yeah, like a part of him still remembers their love,
Oh, yeah.
their rebellion, but
Right.
those emotions are buried.
Under layers and layers.
He's conditioned.
It's tragic.
It really is.
Because even if he's outwardly conformed,
Right.
it feels like he's trapped
Uh-huh.
in this state of perpetual doublethink.
Aware of the truth, but unable to express it.
Fate worse than death.
It is. And maybe that's the ultimate warning
Yeah.
Orwell is giving us.
Like 1984 isn't just some dystopian fantasy. It's a cautionary tale about how fragile truth is
Mm-hmm.
and how seductive totalitarian regimes can be.
It makes you wonder, are there any signs of this kind of thought control
Oh, gosh.
in our own world? I mean, we don't have telescreens or thought police,
Right.
but there are these subtle ways that information gets manipulated
There are.
and controlled.
Absolutely. Like, look at the rise of misinformation.
Yeah.
These echo chambers on social media.
Uh-huh.
The way that some narratives get amplified.
While others are just completely silenced.
It's scary.
It's a slippery slope for sure.
It is.
In 1984, it's this stark reminder
Yeah.
of what happens when we become complacent.
When we don't question the information that we're being fed.
Orwell was so worried about the erosion of language.
Yeah.
And how it can shape our thoughts.
He saw how totalitarian regimes twisted words,
Yeah.
manipulated meaning to control people.
And we're seeing echoes of that today.
We are.
The way that certain terms get weaponized
Right.
to silence people who disagree.
Yeah. Or to just create division.
It's a reminder that language isn't just about communication.
Uh-huh.
It's a weapon
Powerful weapons.
that can be used to control and manipulate
which is why it's more important than ever
Right.
to be critical thinkers.
Yes, to question everything.
The narratives we encounter
To look for different perspectives.
have open dialogues.
It's so easy to get stuck in our own little echo chambers.
Yeah.
Where we only hear what we already agree with.
Exactly.
But we have to step outside of those comfort zones.
We do.
And challenge our own assumptions.
1984 reminds us that the fight for freedom of thought, it's an ongoing battle.
Absolutely.
It's not enough to just resist the obvious forms of oppression.
Right.
We have to be vigilant against those subtle ways that our minds can be manipulated.
Such a powerful message.
And so relevant
to our world today.
to our listener out there, if you haven't already.
Yeah.
I highly recommend you dive into 1984.
It's a challenge on read.
It is.
But it's essential.
It will make you question everything you thought you knew.
About truth.
Power.
The nature of reality.
And who knows?
Yeah.
It might just inspire you.
To be a little more rebellious. A little more critical, more determined.
To think for yourself.
Until next
Keep
time.
those minds sharp.
And never stop questioning. 3022s.